Hello, hey, Mitchell here. Got some fascinating stuff today. Um, we are uh, hearing a lot about going into 5D right now. And what is 5D? Well, um, there's so many explanations, but most of the explanations are from this perspective. Uh, let's look at it from the universal perspective. So, you may recall a while back I talked about how this 3D, this life experience is like a bungee jump. So, all of consciousness is up here, and we bungee jump as far away as we possibly can from all that is, and it goes 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 until it can't go anymore, and then it bounces back. Now, when we get all the way, when we get so far away from infinite that we start shedding pieces of understanding, then we thin down our understanding, and it only packs into, you know, who knows what, 200 dimensions, 100 dimensions, 50 dimensions, 20 dimensions, 10 dimensions, 3 dimensions. That's where we are, okay? Um, so that's what we've done. We've gone, and 3 dimensions is so incredibly dense so that it can pack infinite dimensions into only three. All right. So that's what we get to be. We get to be this sensation of limitation, is what it really is. Now, um, fascinating thing is if we talk about 3 dimensions and then we talk about good and evil, how come good and evil only exists furthest away from the infinite? Well, is there really good and evil? Well, when you get down to so such a limited number of options, as in 3D, then well, this mechanism, when given a little bit of consciousness, maybe a little bit more than a cat or something, for example, then we tend to want to manipulate and control and hold onto pieces so that we ensure the safety of this, because this is all we understand at this extreme distance from all that is. And we forget. And it's really not forgetting, it's distancing ourselves. When we distance ourselves so far from infinite, we have created a sense of memory that is unique to this experience, and this memory serves only to perpetuate what this experience as a human being is. So we don't wake up and say, "Oh my gosh, wonderful new day." We wake up and say, uh, "Job, taxes, got an appointment at 4." All these things. That's where memory comes in, is to recast yesterday into today, or recast each moment into the next moment. Now, the fascinating thing is, our lifespan is only, 80 years or so. So that way, well, that's just 80 years in the field of infinite is nothing. But when you're like this and you're at the very end before you get snapped back, that's our 80-year span, and that's where our memory, our ability to stay here, uh, can only can manage, because the pull back to consciousness is so strong. And so us going into 5D is bring that little bounce at the end. We've hit 3D to the max. It can't sustain, so we have to go back. And we're going to be slingshotted back. We're going to go back so fast. So anyway, folks are saying, well, what's going to happen? How come I don't get to experience 5D if, this is going to take X years and X years? Infinite is infinite. Time is the one of, well, actually, maybe it's that fourth dimension, right? That we have here that we're just now seeing as part of the structure of what it is to have limitation. And so don't worry about the time, and don't worry about whether or not this one gets to experience the 5D, because, well, fascinating enough, it never doesn't experience 5D. We have to be part of 5D to be here. That bungee cord has never let go of us. So 5D is, that far away from the bottom of the extreme of the bungee jump. So that's the idea. That's my perception. Another fascinating thing is the idea of the empty cup. And I've talked about that previously too. The empty cup it's a Zen principle. And there's a story about this, very I don't know what you would call him. He's a scholar, and he he prides himself on knowing lots and lots of things, and so he's actually a Zen scholar, and he decides that he needs to go see this incredible Zen master in order to get more Zen understanding and more Zen learning. And so he makes this pilgrimage, this scholar. He's got his fine robes. He's a member of the top class in ancient China, and he finds this Zen master, and he shows up with his entourage, and he goes in and he sits down, and he starts pontificating to this Zen master about all the stuff that he has learned about Zen and knows about Zen, and he is now ready for whatever a little bit that the master can add on to his vast knowledge of Zen. And so the master, being the master, is polite, and he follows tradition. So he sets out the teacups and he makes the tea while the scholar is going on and on and on and on. And he begins to pour the tea for the master, and he fills the cup. And then he keeps filling the cup, and the cup overflows, and spills off the table, it spills onto this master's fine robes. And the master's like, what is going on here? Listen, buddy, can't you fill even a teacup? Now, why can't you, stop? And the master says, you are like this full cup. You can't receive anymore. So don't know if it was lost on the scholar or not, but that's how we tend to be with our memory. We fill up our memory with more and more things that we need to do, or more and more ideas that we feel are important to make this physical body experience better. And we're only using ideas from learned experiences that said, oh, this was fun. How can I make sure that I have more and more and more of this thing that I felt was fun at one time? And the infinite being the infinite, it doesn't limit itself to this one thing that was fun this one time. It has all kinds of new stuff for us. So if we are focused on only bringing together the circumstances to perpetuate this one thing that we feel is good or fun or enjoyable, then we block out all the rest of the potential experiences that we are here to have. So we can have, even in this very limited um, and limiting experiential capacity, body, mind, senses, we can still participate in the infinite by continually emptying our cup and being here to experience each individual moment as unique and as completely new, because every moment has never been before for us, because we have this little thing called time. And the infinite is saying, hey, if you just forget about your section of where you are in this time and your section of memory that keeps you wanting to have your favorite things, then guess what? You might learn that there are more favorite things for you to experience that you are blocking out by carrying forward only those ones that you feel are what you prefer the most. Hope that made sense. It's a little um, the subtle little understandings are sometimes the hardest to communicate, because again we perpetuate our limitation through language too. That's another really fascinating little piece, is I only have so many words in my vocabulary to be able to communicate my personal infinite inspired experience on to someone else, because you see this as an encapsulation that is distinct from you. And so you see this body and this mind as something very distinct and apart from, and rather than uh, being able to um, fully experience all that is by opening up to uh, the idea of oneness, really, but this non separation, open up to non separation, then we uh, uh, share far, far, far more, and we begin to see it through this transparency that surpasses, bypasses, exceeds language, words in every way, because we are experiencing in this transparency the amazing uh, bounty of what we are here to experience. And this bounty, I want to keep wanting to say infinite, but we have tapered down our ability to experience to this. So be in this and use this body, mind, senses, experiential, dense um, um, vehicle to get the most out of this experiment, this 3D, that you possibly can. And you'll notice that as you come into that perspective, the wonder and joy of of the infinite one that you really are continues within, even though you're experiencing only what this tiny little vessel allows in. So that's kind of that paradox of being the infinite while being the severely limited. So fascinating stuff. I would say, I would continue to say, do your meditations, do the meditations that I've given here. Um, Use the body as your anchor, use the body as that place where you can bring this intense sense of well being, because the body itself knows well being. That's all it's programmed to do, because it doesn't have that thought generator and memory component that weeds everything out. The body still is more in connection with the infinite than the mind, because the mind, it has calibrated itself to what we know here, or at least we have calibrated our minds by teaching all of our children, this is what we are, and putting them in our little boxes and our little educations. And it's great because really it teaches us how to function in this world experience, but it also um, cuts off a lot of the larger experiences that we can have if we are to allow in all possibilities, uh, which the mind doesn't like to do. It likes to work with a very specific palette. And so, boy, I think we've covered a lot here today. Uh, you know, we've covered what good and evil is, really. Because if we talk about the need to safeguard these components of what this body mind complex feels are necessary to bring this one pleasure, then we end up with what looks like evil. Because we'll do it at any expense. We'll kill. We'll, deprive others. We will, maim, take, steal. All these uh, evil things in order to pacify what the mind thinks this wants. And that's really just that very, very, very distal point of pure consciousness. And right now, because we're slingshotting back, these characteristics cannot come back with us. So these characteristics are being shed because they no longer pertain, especially as we move back into higher and higher and higher and higher dimensions, as this bungee snaps us back to where we came from. And so we're going to hit dimensions where the need to perpetuate an idea of pleasure at any cost doesn't exist, because we already know that everything is infinite. And at the very, 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 very distal point of consciousness, that sense of limitation is so strong that we feel like we must continually safeguard what it is that we um, feel is our highest pleasure. And really, that's it. It's the distinction between pleasure and joy. And pleasure, it can be pretty. It's so um, ephemeral. Pleasure is, and we're not sure. When we are seeking pleasure over eternal joy, then wow, we can do things that appear to be evil, because we're trying to safeguard that. I do. Uh, I noticed that a lot of the people that are coming forward in, or not being, but are being brought forward to be high levels of the current administration, have some pretty insidious pleasures. A lot of them, seem to have these really fascinating and destructive sexual um, overtones, child traffickers and things like that. And this group seems to see that that's, I mean, they all, uh, to them, it's acceptable in a lot of ways. Um, Fascinating, but that is coming out, and we're seeing that they see that as acceptable because they're like, yeah, well, they're pretty um, blasé about it, uh, and a little bit shocked that nobody else gets it, or very few others. But so that's the very distal end of consciousness, and they, as pure ideas, individuals, are not coming back. They can't come back into the higher dimension. There's no place for that because uh, limitation sheds so quickly as we return back to infinite. Even by, one, two, three dimensions, once we hit fifth dimension, there's no place for such thinking, because that is um, cast aside because it's no longer relevant. It's back to the limitation. We start to see uh, there's this transience, there's this transparency that comes as we move back up. That we notice, wow, we don't need words, we don't need uh, distinctions, because that was only used to have the experience of 3D. And now we're coming back into this unity consciousness, which is, more universal consciousness, back into the higher dimensions. But um, the uh, the the framework of the 3D is still kind of pulling on us to say, well, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how we communicate, um, and that's where, back to the empty cup, it's like, you know what? Let's just be very open. Let's be very clear about where we can go, or who we are or are not. Let's just be very clear. Let's be very translucent in our experiencing. Experience the world purely as this wonderful bit of pure consciousness through the senses that are the body. And I did touch on something with the body, that the body is still not part of the mind. The body is always healing, it's always returning back to its blueprint, which is ageless, timeless. It's just the nature of infinity is joy, it's bliss, it's continual renewal, awakening. And so the body itself is not as far away as the conceptual mind from pure consciousness. And so it, when left completely alone, is always trying to return to health. It's always trying to heal. And sometimes there's pain, and it's like, well, why is this? Well, it's the body trying to heal in the face of the contradictory concepts of the mistaken mind, the mind that is really, really only wanting to perpetuate this distinction idea. I think we've done enough today. Wonderful to see you all. Please comment, like, subscribe, give me some ideas for different videos. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.